Last week, the cameras returned to Sharm el-Sheikh. Leaders gathered beneath chandeliers, flags lined the corridors, and the word peace echoed through every statement. The summit, staged in the same Red Sea resort that has hosted countless historic meetings before, was meant to mark the day after in Gaza. But what unfolded wasn't diplomacy. It was performance, a carefully choreographed show in which Donald Trump took center stage, and Egypt played both host and gatekeeper. For Sisi, the conference was a declaration: Egypt remains indispensable. After 2 years of economic crisis and a collapsing currency, Cairo wanted to project control, stability, and relevance as the Middle East's indispensable mediator. For Trump, it was a show. Fighter jets escorted Air Force One, the smiles were wide, the applause rehearsed. Then came the climax: Sisi decorating Trump with the Order of the Nile, Egypt's highest civilian honor. Behind all that ceremony, the enduring peace and prosperity plan remained vague. Neither Israel nor Hamas attended. Netanyahu refused, Hamas was excluded. Other news reports spoke of Erdogan forcing Netanyahu not to show up by threatening to boycott the event. What the cameras captured wasn't an agreement, it was a tableau, diplomacy without the warring parties. Cairo's today's role is constrained. It indeed manages the Rafah crossing, oversees prisoner exchange, and will soon host a major international conference on Gaza's reconstruction. Just days before the summit, at least 154 Palestinian prisoners were transferred through Egypt as part of the ceasefire deal, a moment of supposed prestige for Cairo's mediation. But the contradictions are glaring. While Egypt markets itself as a humanitarian bridge, it continues to suppress even symbolic solidarity at home. The family of Palestinian journalist Saleh el-Jafarawi learned that painfully. They had announced a mourning gathering at a mosque in Cairo, the city to which they were displaced, then abruptly cancelled it, citing family circumstances. Everyone knew that wasn't the real reason. Egypt's security agencies have repeatedly blocked visuals, student events, and even small fundraisers for Gaza. It's almost certain that authorities ordered the cancellation to prevent Egyptians from publicly honoring a Palestinian journalist who had become a symbol of defiance. The irony is striking. In Oslo, mourners lit candles beneath al-Jafarawi's portrait. In Cairo, the lights were switched off. Norway's open civic space allowed solidarity. Egypt's repressive machinery turned silence into policy. And as Norway cut investments in firms complicit with the Israeli occupation, Egypt was deepening trade and finalizing a new gas deal with Israel. A journalist honored in Oslo, forbidden in Cairo, that contrast captures Egypt's balancing act better than any summit speech ever could. The ceasefire halted the bombing, but only briefly. Over the weekend, the truce came under strain after a series of exchanges of fire between Israel and Hamas. Israel said Hamas fighters launched sniper and RPG attacks on its forces east of the so-called Yellow Line, the edge of the zone from which Israeli troops had withdrawn. In response, Israeli jets struck several targets in southern Gaza, the most serious breach of the agreement since the Sharm summit. The attacks underscore what everyone knew. This ceasefire rests on sand. Even before the latest strikes, the humanitarian situation had not improved. In Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood, Israeli tanks earlier killed 11 members of one family, 7 children and 3 women among them. It was one of more than 40 ceasefire violations documented in a single week. Israel still refuses to reopen Rafah fully. It seized the crossing from the Palestinian side last year and continues to block the flow of goods and people, citing demands that Hamas locate and hand over the remains of Israeli captives. The closure left hundreds of Palestinians stranded in Egypt, waiting to return home, but estimates run as high as 100,000 Palestinians. Late Saturday, the Palestinian embassy in Cairo announced that Egypt will reopen Rafah on Monday for Palestinians returning to Gaza. The crossing will operate under the supervision of the European Union Border Assistance Mission, whose officers from Italy, Spain, and France resumed work last week after months of suspension. Egypt says the move is part of ongoing coordination with international mediators, but for many families, the wait has already been unbearable. Meanwhile, the United Nations warns that famine relief will take time. The World Food Programme said it delivered about 3,000 tons of food since the truce, far below what's needed. 9 bakeries are now operating again, but hundreds of thousands remain hungry. 8 convoys move forward slowly through the few open crossings, Karm Abu Salim and Kisufim, while Rafah, Gaza's main entry, remains choked by politics and by the Israeli occupation. UN officials say the destruction in Gaza is almost beyond comprehension. Debris from the bombardment could fill New York's Central Park 12 meters high. The ceasefire has opened a window, but it's narrow and closing fast. Donald Trump dominated the Sharm summit like an actor who owned the stage. He arrived flanked by Egyptian F-16s, joked about great deals, and staged a handshake with Mahmoud Abbas, the first in 8 years. He promised to end endless wars and make the desert bloom. His plan, reconstruction under international trusteeship, Hamas sidelines, foreign powers enforcing calm, remains unforceable without Israeli cooperation. But for Trump, the image was the victory, and for Sisi, sharing the frame was enough. Next month, Egypt will host the Cairo Conference for Early Recovery and Reconstruction in Gaza, co-organized with the UN and the World Bank. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa confirmed that it aims to mobilize global funding for a 5-year, $67 billion plan to rebuild Gaza, focusing on infrastructure, education, governance, and economic recovery. In the lead-up, Danish shipping giant Maersk has expressed readiness to support Egypt's reconstruction efforts. The company's chair met Sisi in Cairo, praising Egypt's role in the mediating the ceasefire and hosting the Sharm summit. The company plans to use East Port Said as a logistics hub for Gaza's rebuilding, with new container routes through the Suez Canal, which still carries 12% of global trade. Sisi, for his part, welcomed the company's interest in supplying green fuel to ships and expanding its container terminal investments, part of Egypt's push to brand itself as a regional hub for both trade and reconstruction. The symbolism is strong. Cairo's diplomacy and commerce now move in lockstep, turning the war's aftermath into an opportunity for investment. Even as Egypt hosts summits and partnerships, its frontier with Israel is under quite scrutiny. Israeli lawmakers have warned of a sharp rise in drone smuggling from Egypt, describing it as an existential threat. Officials claim nearly 900 drone incursions in 3 months, alleging ferrying heavy weapons into the Naqab. Cairo has not commented publicly, but the accusations highlight how Egyptian-Israeli border is again becoming a fault line. At home, the Sharm spectacle doubled as domestic propaganda. State media portrayed Sisi as the savior of regional calm. Yet human rights groups report dozens of Egyptians still detained for Gaza-related posts or protests, some held for years without trial. Even when prosecutors order releases, the Interior Ministry delays implementation. Egypt can host peace conferences, but still criminalize empathy. As the first freed prisoners crossed through Egyptian soil, headlines claimed the war is over. But Gaza streets remain dust and rubble. Its people remain displaced. Reconstruction will take years, and even then, peace is uncertain. Trump and Sisi have already declared success, a pose presented as progress. The Sharm el-Sheikh conference gave the world a story of closure, but for Gaza's displaced, for Egypt's silenced activists, and for the family of Saleh Jafarawi denied the right to mourn, the story is far from over. Trump's theatrics drew the lights, Egypt's diplomacy provided the stage. Yet the real drama continues off camera, in Cairo's interrogation rooms, in torture dungeons, in Khan Yunis's ruins, and in the long lines at Rafah. When history looks back, Sharm el-Sheikh may not be remembered as the birthplace of peace, but as another act in the region's long-running theater of illusions. And as always, the silence from Cairo speaks louder than any speech made in Sharm.